Welcome to the Flip Side, listeners. I want to apologize as senior audio producer for last week's episode. Something horrible happened and our audio didn't pick up from the mixing board. So as many of you saw, whoever watched the podcast, you saw us speaking into our microphones, but you weren't hearing us through our microphones, and that was my fault. And I'm terribly sorry about that, and I apologize. You are listening to The Flip Side on northeastvalleynews.org. Thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to us on our site, go back and read some of the stories. If you're listening to us on NEVN FM, on Anchor and Spotify, we thank you for that as well. This is The Flip Side. It's a two-part podcast. The first few minutes is the flip side of the news. The last few minutes is the flip side of sports. Let's get started with the flip side of the news. Yesterday, there was a tragic event in Michigan at East Lansing at Michigan State. A person came on campus at night. His name is Anthony McCray. He's 43 years old. He killed 3 people on the campus of Michigan State University and critically wounded 5 others before taking his own life. This has been happening for the last several years. We've had more shootings than we can even remember, I think. I mean, it's become a plague. This is what we do know. The shootings began sometime around 8:18 Monday night. They took place in a building called Berkeley Hall. Berkeley Hall is where the sociology stuff is. So the College of Social Science, Institute for Public Policy and Social Research, and the sociology department was in Berkeley Hall. Some of the shooting also took place at the Michigan State University Student Union. The Student Union, for those of you who are not familiar with the way buildings are named at universities, the Student Union is almost always the cafeteria area, the area where students gather, play video games or pool, whatever. That sort of area. Once again, Michigan State is in East Lansing, Michigan, not a very large town. We know that classes are canceled today and tomorrow. All of their sports have been canceled until further notice. This is what we don't know. We do not know if the victims were students or faculty. We do not know what McCray's motive was. We do not know whether McCray knew any of the victims. We do know that he purchased the gun that he used in these killings at a pawn shop the same day as the murders. It's also been reported that Mr. McCray had a history of mental illness. I used to sell firearms at a registered firearm dealer, and you are not allowed to buy a gun if you have a history of mental illness. The fact that he bought his gun at a pawn shop kind of throws a wrench in that works, because I don't think, and I don't know this because I've never tried to buy a gun at a pawn shop, but I don't think that you have to fill out all the forms and answer all the questions and such. And so I don't think that there's that line of defense when you buy a gun at a pawn shop. Neither are there any questions asked if you buy a gun from a private party.
Oh, yeah.
So Jason, if you had a gun to sell and you wanted to sell it to me, all I have to do is give you money and you hand me the gun. Okay. This gentleman probably shouldn't have had a gun. He reportedly was arrested for what would have been a felony of carrying a concealed weapon without a concealed carry permit in 2019. He reportedly pled guilty to a misdemeanor and they dismissed the felony. Otherwise, he would have been a felon in possession of a handgun, and that is also illegal. So Now we've established that this person shouldn't have had a gun. Aside from that, or maybe including that, we're going to discuss what the flip side of this story is. How could this have been? I mean, how honestly could this possibly have been avoided?
I think the first thing is pawn shops need to change their rules on buying and selling guns to anybody. I think they need to up their background check.
Maybe we should just not buy
shops-
pawn. Maybe pawn
don't
shops
think
shouldn't be able to
No.
sell guns.
I don't think guns.
I think we should just say that.
Just keep
Yeah.
it at
Or there should be
licensed stores.
if you have them, if you have like a liability thing where they're held liable, then they'd be a lot more reluctant or a lot more careful. to
Right,
sell
right.
guns.
Right. When you go into a regular gun shop and buy a gun, you have to answer a bunch of questions and say that you're not mentally ill and that you're not a felon and blah, 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 blah. So there, and then you sign your name to it and stuff. So if they find out that any of those answers are wrong, you get arrested for that too.
Is that so?
So yeah,
Yeah.
you're not. Yeah, that's.
Do you guys think the pawn shop owners are getting investigated right now?
I
or in
think
trouble?
there's got to
They
be
should.
something.
I mean, I think
I don't know if they are because I'm not sure they violated any laws because I don't think that those restrictions, I don't think they have
Are in
those
place.
restrictions on them. I don't know that. This is Michigan. I'm familiar with Minnesota gun laws. Arizona has very loose gun laws because it's like the Wild West out here. Anybody can carry a concealed weapon in Arizona, I think, can you? Or you just register
You gotta-
yourself.
I believe you can open carry, but I might be wrong. I
Right.
think
Yeah,
you
you can open
conceal.
anybody can open carry, but you
Conceal.
have to have a permit to
You have to have a
conceal.
permit.
But it really
Yeah.
doesn't take, you just register. You just go on a site and register and they
Yeah.
send
Yeah.
you a
You
permit.
don't got to go to an appointment.
No, you don't have to go. In Minnesota, you have to go before you can buy a gun. You got to go to like gun training and all of this stuff
Yeah.
and learn how to not shoot yourself by accident, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if any of that, I don't know if they do that in Michigan or anything. The gun laws are all highly variable across states. Could the university have done anything? It's 8:18 at night. It's a Monday night. It's a state school. So I mean, it's not like there's a gate out front where you gotta state your business when you come in.
I feel like all universities have those big, like even here at SCC we have those big blue
yeah,
emergency
emergency
stations,
button.
and they
Mhm.
had them when I was at Penn State.
Mhm.
So I know they have them all across the country. I feel like
A panic phone
maybe-
type thing.
Yeah, and so you click it and it'll call the cops and it'll give them where like
Mhm.
they're all around all
Mhm.
the streets on the campuses, and then they'll just come straight to you and make sure you're safe. But
Mhm.
I feel like maybe in a situation like that, those gotta go off or something. If
I mean, the cops are
there's-
gonna come, and the guy's gonna.
Right.
Yeah,
There was a
but-
very strong police presence on this. I mean, they got there pretty fast.
It's more like how you gonna prevent it, but can you really unless you have
Yeah.
armed guards standing around?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the only way you can do it is to just impinge on everybody's freedom and just stop and ask them who they are and check their ID. And I mean, that would be such a huge help. I mean, how many times?
In China they have this thing where it started off as it would measure your temperature for COVID, and now it's able to pretty much the moment the camera looks at you, mental illness, criminal history, and you're essentially marked for guards to look at you more often.
Oh, it's like
Oh.
facial
So
recognition.
you could have some
for-
dystopian stuff like that going on. That might help.
Well, that's very big brotherish.
Yeah, it
That's,
is.
that's very big brotherish.
And that's what I guess that's like the debate. It's like how many civil liberties do you want to sacrifice
Right.
for security?
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point, Marcus. You hit it right on the button. Really.
Yeah.
And then, of
Um,
course, how do you even console the families that are involved? But then again, I mean, think about like a month ago, the California shootings. Do any of us even remember the names or the cities? I mean, this is going to happen again in a few weeks, and then we're probably as screwed up as it sounds.
Yeah, unfortunately it's going to
Yeah.
happen again.
We're going to
Right.
forget about a lot of it.
CNN just came up with a report about this, like not even an hour ago, kind of an hour ago. And they said that the shooter, he had a note in his pocket. He was threatening to go to a couple of public schools. Like there was a note that said he indicated a threat to two Ewing public schools that
Hmm.
the police department found out.
Doesn't say
today.
anything that he had targets or anything, or was it just random people he was?
No, I think that one
we
of the
don't-
people
we
that
don't
died is
know.
a student.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The reports that I read earlier today didn't didn't really say if the people involved were students or faculty, or if McRae knew any of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, until we find out more and we can put the pieces together and figure out what his motive was, I think it's just going to be a mystery at this point. But I mean, there's just so many things floating around out there of, how we can keep more people safe from gun violence. And it's,
I wonder if the university is working on it. It'd be kind
I'm sure they're looking into some ways to keep this from happening again.
Because
the
of course,
president of the university was very despondent about.
I think at this point we all know it's going to be gridlock at the higher level. So at this point, local communities, schools, they should try, because of course the government.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be. I think it's going to have to be up to the individual institutions to try to figure out how to keep people safe. Because it's. I mean, if this gentleman had a history of mental illness, he bought his gun from a pawn shop. There, there's ways around stuff. So I mean, it's going to have to maybe come down to some individual choices as far as schools and things like that are concerned.
Definitely.
Let's flip over to something a little lighter hearted. The flip side of sports. The flip side of sports. Today's Tuesday, February 14th. Oh, happy Valentine's Day, by the way, everyone.
Oh.
I don't have a sweetheart, so I get off easy on this thing.
Same.
Score. You don't ever want to start going out with anybody like right before Christmas or Valentine's Day. You're just getting yourself.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, you're getting yourself into a lot of trouble. So here's what's going on in the next few weeks with football. We just had the Super Bowl out here in Glendale. So the NFL season is officially over. Jason's shaking his head next to me because his Philadelphia Eagles got beat by a very, very slim margin. What a great game it was, though.
It was a great
Jason,
game.
you got to admit, anytime that the Super Bowl is competitive and high scoring, I'm all for it. Really all for it. Sophia, what was your favorite part of the Super Bowl? Did you watch the halftime show?
I did.
I don't ever watch the halftime show. Did you like it?
Congrats on her being pregnant.
Was Stephen A. Smith right?
No, I mean she had a great she had a great performance. I think we were all expecting just a little more though, because she's been gone for so long, but credit to her, she's now gonna welcome a second child into the world, which is cool. But there was just something missing the whole time for it.
I'm against kids anyway too.
Can you believe she was dangling up that high and she's pregnant?
Did you see one of the people on those dangly things almost fell off? They're like in these big old marshmallow suits, and he almost fell.
Again, I don't watch the halftime show.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the NFL is donezo for the year. Luckily, if you're a football fan, we do not have to go the whole summer without football. Hip, hip, hooray on that, okay? So on February 18th, the XFL is starting back up. This is the third time for the XFL. Third time's a charm. Third time is a charm, mister. We've got new people in charge of the XFL. They were derailed by the pandemic, basically, is what happened the first time. Everything was going along swell for the XFL, and the pandemic came and they had to shut the doors. So now they're back with some new owners. The Rock is one of them. He's the highest profile of the owners. The other owner is a woman, and I apologize a million times that I can't remember her name. But she is the only female sports league owner in the U.S. ever.
Good for her.
Yeah. Kudos. The XFL is going to come back. They're going to have 8 teams. We have another league too. The XFL is going to start February 18th. On April 16th, the USFL is coming back for their second year. Jason, did you watch the USFL? Did you follow the USFL last year?
I did, and it was the same exact outcome as it was for every other Philadelphia team this year. The Union made it all the way to the
Marcus,
finals and lost.
Marcus, did you follow USFL last year?
No, but I want to follow
Okay.
XFL because I'm hoping they bring back all these crazy rules and make.
No, they're not. They're not going to.
How you gonna-
This XFL is going to be very similar to the last XFL, I believe, not the first XFL.
Without
The first
crazy-
XFL was a fusion of professional wrestling and football, and it did
Bring
not
that
work
back.
out. But it was exciting.
Yeah, and it's days.
Don't
was
get me wrong;
exciting.
it was
Do you
exciting.
think another regular football league's gonna stick around? It's gonna get boring after a while.
Well, we're going to have to find out about this. USFL is coming back. They're going to have 8 teams again. They're going to play. This was the big stumper to me with the USFL. Last year, I understood because of the pandemic and things, they had the bubble thing going on where they all of them played in Birmingham and they all stayed in Birmingham and they all played at Protective Stadium, ironically enough. Okay, so that was a unique thing. This year, they're going to be playing at 2 different stadiums. I don't know why they only went to 2 and why they didn't just go ahead and give all of the teams their own stadium. Perhaps there's still some sort of a snafu with finances.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of
The right, the one of the reasons that this is the at least the second time the USFL has come out, perhaps the third, but I think it's the second. One of the issues with the AAF, which we were talking about before, was the fact that they couldn't afford to pay for their stadium space, so that the teams there weren't enough fans, there wasn't enough revenue to pay for the stadium, so there was some troubles there. So I can understand that maybe every team can't have their own stadium, but so we're playing at Protective Stadium in Birmingham again, but we're also going to be playing at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium in Memphis, Tennessee. So both cities in the Southeast. Once again, their season is going to start April 16th. So there's going to be a little bit of an overlap. The championship game for the XFL is May 13th, and the USFL starts on April 16th. So both 8-team leagues, no teams in Arizona. So we're out of luck on both of those. How do we feel about this, sports guys? Do we think that that both of these leagues are going to make a go of it this year?
I don't think both of them are going to survive, to be honest. But
You don't?
I think if one of them does something crazy, like because wasn't it the AAF or USFL? They weren't bringing back wacky rules, but they were experimenting with like kickoff rules and sort of stuff like.
Both leagues did that.
Mhm.
Both the AAF was experimenting with different rules, for sure.
I mean, because what's so different from last time that's going to survive this time?
Well,
Well, I mean, I think the draw of it is that there's no football, right, during that
Mhm.
time.
There was no football last time.
So, well, the first time the USFL came out, they tried to compete with the NFL. The very first time when Donald Trump was involved,
Mhm.
like that was like back in the 70s, early 80s, something like that. No, it was later than that. It was the 80s or very early 90s. Yeah. Okay. Donald Trump was involved.
Arena football. I just thought.
Arena football's still going
The
on.
Rattlers.
Yeah, the Rattlers, all that indoor
they're
football
fighting
league. That's all
strong every
stuff.
year.
All that stuff's still going on.
See, arena football's been around for a while because it's different.
Yeah,
I
they
think
have.
that needs
Because
more
because
love.
it's different.
Yeah, we should start covering.
But
the
they're not,
Arena
but they're
football
not,
needs
they're
to
not
more love.
bankrupt, are they? They've been around
Mm-mm.
forever.
No, they're still going. The teams change sometimes, and the leagues change a little bit. I think the IFL has been around for quite a bit, and then there was a different indoor league I think that kind of went kaplooey. But it's definitely a smaller niche. Do we think is this too much like spring ball? Should we you think? I kind of like the idea of
I
2
like
leagues,
it.
but
Are you guys going to tune in or are you going to be watching baseball?
I'm definitely going to be tuning into
I
football.
watched a
don't.
lot of it last year, so they keep it up. And
gonna
there's a
definitely
lot of
tune
big names, and especially the XFL this year. There's a bunch of old
I think that's
big-time
the most
college players.
interesting part is there's a lot of guys that didn't make it in the NFL. That I mean, there's so many players that played college football that are probably good enough for the NFL, but just for one
doesn't
reason or
pan
another, they
out.
didn't make it. Maybe they got in trouble, maybe they had a medical, maybe they had an injury during the draft, or and everybody looked past them.
Right.
And there's a ton of those people out there. There's a ton of guys
Great for
that
them.
are really good football players that don't. I mean, the NFL is not. I mean, it's a bigger league than these 8-team leagues, but it's not. I mean, you don't have a lot of chances to play professional football as a football player.
Right.
So I really like this. I would like, in my mind, I would like it to be more of a feeder system to the NFL.
Yeah.
The trouble is the NFL doesn't like to work with anybody like that because they're so big and almighty and powerful. So the NFL doesn't like to have affiliations with other leagues, but I think it would add something to it. And Marcus, you talked about an interesting idea too in pre-production.
Relegation.
Relegation. Now,
what talking about? That's how European soccer works.
So what you're saying is, let's say that the the XFL and the NFL strike up some kind of a deal, which they're not going to. But let's say that they strike up some kind of a deal. You were saying the way that this thing works is that the worst NFL team
It's demoted.
would play the best XFL team.
Right.
And if they lose, the NFL team goes down into the XFL,
exactly,
and the XFL team comes up to the NFL.
Yeah, that's how a lot of European soccer leagues do it. And they also do it to where the one of the worst records just simply gets demoted. There's no game. And
Oh,
then
really?
The one of the best record in the minor league gets
I think in
promoted.
America, we would want to have a game.
But I forget the name, but it results in, there was this minor league Premier League. It wasn't even Premier League. It was like the lower league behind Premier in England. They made it into the Premier League, and against all odds, like a team that has like almost no money, they won the Premier League. And I wish I remember
Really?
the name, but it was a big story. And I was like, imagine that. And
Lowly.
the Vegas Vipers make it to the NFC Championship. I don't
Yeah,
know.
right. That'd be amazing. That
Yeah.
would add something to it.
It would be freaking amazing.
That would add quite a bit to it, I think. Well, that's all the time that we have today for the flip side. We're going to be watching for these two new football leagues. Once again, XFL starts on February 18th. The USFL starts on April 16th. So watch for those, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about those as we get closer. We'd like everyone to follow us on social media, if possible, on TikTok and Twitter. You can follow us at Any Valley News. If you're into Insta or Facebook, go to northeastvalleynews.org, all spelled out. Also, check out our site at nevalleynews.org. We've got some new reporters who are going to be writing some new stories for us, and you're going to want to definitely check those out. Sophia will be one of them, and Marcus will be another. So be sure to watch for that. Thank you for listening and watching this week, and hopefully the audio comes out better on this one.
Hopefully.
All right. We'll see you next week on the flip side.